Hey Jasmine, have you checked out this file? There's some pretty interesting information on it about these 4 brothers, the Milners. 4 of them went off to fight in World War II, but only, 1 of them came back.
Oh, jeez.
It says here that, it says here too, that their parents owned and ran a farm just outside town on Pleasant Corners Road. Apparently none of the brothers were married, nor did they have any children when they enlisted, according to these documents as well.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. There seems to be quite a few details missing, though. I wonder how they died, and if they're buried in Greenwood Cemetery. I would have thought that they would have buried them overseas if they died in service, though.
I know, right? I mean, I wondered about that when I was reading the information on them on this sheet and on these files. Maybe between the tasks I have to do this week, I'll try to do a bit of research and see if I can't figure out more about them, since, they grew up here after all.
Yeah.
It would be nice to know more about these 4 brothers.
Genealogy research is part of what we do here.
That is very true.
Just don't get too carried away.
I won't. Hey, Jasmine, you want to come here for a sec?
Okay, 1 second.
So I did more research on those Milner brothers. And it doesn't really hit you how devastating World War II was for even, the victors, until you actually, really do the research. You hear about the numbers, but actually hearing about their stories firsthand, seeing all those files, it's something quite else. It makes you realize that the war was devastating for everybody. And victors, losers, everyone suffered from it.
And that's a lot of files.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't I tell you not to go overboard?
What can I say? I was like a hound on a scent.
Alright, well, what did you find?
Well, I found out that, once more, we were right. Only 1 of the brothers made it back. The other 3 died overseas. So...
I haven't been able to look at a taxi the same way ever since World War II. It was taxis who delivered the telegrams that were originally sent to the telegram office situated on Main Street here in town. Within 6 months, the Milners, Thomas and Margaret, received notices concerning their sons were missing in action, but also others who were regretfully announcing their death and brave sacrifice. More detailed letters would follow to offer them more information about the death of their sons.
Nope.
However, a lot of this information would only be discovered through government investigation in the years following the war. Their parents had to wait and find out about their brave stories. Imagine waiting years after you'd already lost your sons just to hear more about how they died. I can't even imagine how hard the war was on their parents and siblings of the brothers, waiting all that time just to learn what happened to them. Did you find out anything about them in your research, Sophie?
Actually, I did. It turns out that Benedict Key was the first of his brothers to be declared missing. He was the 3rd son out of 7 children, born on September 17, 1915, and was raised along with them here in Vankleek-Hill. He even participated in cadet drills at the Vankleek-Hill Collegiate Institute. That's the high school just down the road.
Yeah.
Though his father was a farmer, he would go on into a career of mining. At the time of enlistment on August 13, 1941, he was 27 and worked at Sullivan Mines in Quebec. He lived there as well. But in the Royal Canadian Air Force, he would serve as an air gunner. He must have been a good enough gunner since he served in the RCAF for about 2 years, presumably including his time spent training, which could have taken months. Unfortunately, even with the training they received, air gunners like Benedict were not given a very long life expectancy. Most weren't expected to make it past 4 weeks of active service,
That's...
on average.
I wonder if Benedict was aware of what he was walking into when he joined the RCAF. Every man who fought in the war knew there was a risk. I remember on June 26, 1943, Mr. Milner received the first of the letters bearing bad news. The letter was to inform him and his wife that their son Benedict was reported missing in active service. The only information it could give his parents was that his plane had not returned from its bombing run on the night of June 12th and early morning of the 13th. Despite this horrible news, the letter still encouraged his parents into believing that he might still be alive as a prisoner of war in German territory. About a month later, however, they received another letter stating that their son was believed to have been killed in action based on reports from the enemy forces. It wouldn't be until June 12, 1945, only 10 days after the end of the war, that they would receive the investigation report concerning the death of their son. It would be this report that would make his death at age 27 official, though they would only receive information concerning his burial a year later on August 14th, 1946. That's horrible. Sophie, do you know where they're buried?
Yeah, through my research, I found out that according to military documents, it's up here somewhere, he was buried in Westerbork Cemetery, General Cemetery in the Netherlands. There's a reference to his grave as being on grave 2, plot 33.
What about the other brothers?
Well, the second brother to go missing during the war was Joseph Emmet. According to my notes here, he was the second oldest of his siblings. He was born on August 5th, 1913, a year after his brother Thomas was born. Before joining the military at around the age of 30, Joseph had lived in Montreal like his other brother. He registered into the Royal Canadian Air Force in 1941 and completed his training in pilot flying and ground training on July 15th, 1941, with an average of 83%, with many remarks recommending him. Remarks that included that he was dependable, mature, serious, responsible, neat, keen, alert, and that he had you get the idea.
Yeah.
He had a good background as well as experience, according to the remarks, too. He would then proceed to flying training as a pilot, but he did a little less well in his training, according to the reports in his file. They stated that he was an average pilot, basically, who needed all, for intents and purposes, to have more confidence in himself. By December 6th of 1941, however, he had passed his training and was officially a pilot within the RCAF. So he officially began his service after he had completed that training.
I know that on September 1st, in 1943, Mr. Milner received a letter announcing to him and his wife that after 6 operational flights, their son Joseph Emmet had gone missing in action, as he had failed to return from an operational flight on the night of the 31st of August, 1st of September of 1943. While still missing, his parents were notified of a standard promotion he was given. He was officially presumed to be dead on this flight on June 15th in 1944. Nearly a year later, his parents would not receive any information concerning his death till after the war, when they received a letter concerning him and his brother Evan's death. They would only find out around then that he was buried in Berlin, 1939 to 1945 War Cemetery, Germany. His grave reference, I believe, is Colonel Grave 2, G 14 to 18.
So according to my notes, Evan Patrick Milner was one of the youngest Milner brothers to join the RCAF. He was the 5th out of 7 children. He was born on March 11th, 1920. Before registering into the Army, he had followed his older brother into the mining industry and worked at the Cisco gold mine, where...
That's fascinating. Oh my god.
Right. Just gonna restart that.
Whack me. Jeez.
Ready? Okay. Before registering into the Army, he had followed his older brother into the mining industry and worked at the Cisco gold mine while he lived on Cisco Island in Quebec. He registered in North Bay, Ontario on May 19th in 1941, around the age of 24, at about the same time as his older brother Joseph. Like his older brother Benedict, he would go on to become a gunner within the RCAF. His official rank was pilot officer, though. He did fairly well in his training, emerging with an average of 75%, and recommendations from his superiors that he would make an excellent gunner within the RCAF, much like his brother. No amount of skill, however, could protect him forever, as you could probably already guess from what we've already said about gunners.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Especially in an attack against Berlin in 1944, when the RCAF was hitting German forces with constant attacks aimed at their industrial sector. Though he had successfully made it through 13 missions before the one where he went missing. Right there, that shows that he was a good gunner to have lasted so long.
No kidding. It was Evan's oldest brother, Thomas Milner, who received the first letter stating that his younger brother was missing in action. He received it on the 31st of January in 1944. Within the letter, it was explained that he had not returned on the night of the 28th of January in 1944. Since they had not heard from Evan's plane since he last took off, they assumed that its loss was through enemy action. He was described as cheerful and efficient, traits that made him very popular. In 1947, his parents finally received a letter which contained more details concerning his death, where his plane went down and where his body had been reburied in Germany. Another letter would appear in May of 1950 with a more detailed report concerning the last missions of their sons, Evan and Joseph.
Where was Evan buried? Do either of you know?
According to my research, his remains were never found, so his name was added to a commemoration at the Runnymede Memorial in Surrey in the United Kingdom. The number of war casualties listed on the memorial, including Evan, is about 20,279 people, according to my notes. He's listed on panel number 252 of the memorial.
It's so sad that not only were the brothers buried overseas, but they were buried so far apart.
Yeah. According to my notes, though, as it says here, their names are on the family's grave, though. And through us, if you think about it, as well as others who continue to tell their story, their memory can live on. Their bravery never forgotten, nor their origins or where they came from.
I like that idea, honey. It's a very comforting thought. Now then, do either of you want some ginger snap cookies?
Yes, please.
Please.